Utopia podcast. I am your co-host, Michelle Welch.
And I'm your co-host, Roger Welch. So what's up today, Michelle?
I don't know. You want to tell them the topic of tonight's show?
We're talking about I'm psychic. I'm not crazy.
Okay. So what do we have in store for tonight's show?
So tonight, a lot of times people think about it, oh, you're not psychic. You're just kind of crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. That's just voices you're hearing, things like that. Mm-hmm. It's not really that way, though, is it?
I don't know. Is it?
What do you think?
What do you think?
I mean, no, it's like, it's the thing is that a lot of times just because one person is shut down, a lot of times they don't realize that somebody else has opened up to it and actually carry through.
Yeah.
Nothing on that?
No, I was just listening.
Oh, okay. So, but the thing is that, a lot of times, just because somebody has shut down, they just consider everybody else just doesn't, they're not hearing stuff. They're not hearing messages. They're not getting, images coming across, flashing like a movie screen coming across. Mm-hmm. What do you think? You ever had that?
Well, I've had it both ways. I've had where since I was really little, it was very normal for me to hear things, see things. So that's something that just comes like very naturally to me. So I always thought that was the norm. And I was always, I guess you could use the word psychic. And I thought I would read the definition of that word because I'm always saying, there's not that big of a difference between psychic and faith. So I wanted to look it up again because I know I used to teach that and then I hadn't looked at it in a long time. So I thought I'd read that to you guys. The word psychic, and this is in like dictionary. I think this is, that's how you pronounce it, psychic. I think that it's dictionary.com is where this is on, but it's an app on my phone. And it says of or relating to the human soul or mind. So it's mental as opposed to physical. The psychology is pertaining to or noting mental phenomena and providing care for persons with disordered minds and emotions like a psychic hospital. So if somebody is crazy, which I think is that's what we're saying, I'm psychic, not crazy, but it actually looks like it says providing care for those people. Performed by or existing in the mind, so making a mental note or mental math. So it doesn't mean it's necessarily that it's all in your head, because you can do it in your head, but that doesn't mean it's not real. Like the answers to a math equation, correct?
Right.
And then the fifth definition is pertaining to intellectuals or intellectual activity, and this is the adjective form. And then in the informal sense, it says slightly daft, out of one's mind, crazy, he's mental. So that was the sixth definition of psychic. And as a noun, in the informal definition, a person with a psychological disorder. So it's interesting to me that, it tells you in the very first definition and some other definitions that you could read that it does not pertain to like, it is more like the antonyms of it. The best way to say it, the antonyms are of the regular psycho word would be balanced, body, sane. So and then they go, when they use it as in a different way, they'll use it as not sane. But faith, on the other hand, can I?
Yeah.
Yeah. So faith is also trusting in something that is not within the norm of where you can naturally see it, or something outside the body. Okay, so that's the first definition of psychic, right? So it's number one, confidence or trust in a person or thing. Confidence or trust in a person or thing. So you can have faith in your own ability or faith in something else. A belief that is not, this is number two on faith, a belief that's not based on proof. Well, so think about psychic stuff. It's not based on proof, but people will say necessarily, it's really hard to prove, but some people and measure, but yet so is faith. So it's just, I love that definition too. It's just that on faith, and they do a definition 3 that is actually a belief in God or in the doctrines or teachings of a particular religion. But going back to that definition 2 is where I say they're very, very similar, because they are both where they're not necessarily based on proof, and both of them have like as their synonyms as trusting in like acceptance, a belief, but it's a belief in something outside of yourself.
Right.
Most of the time, as though you can have, or it could be belief or belief in oneself too, I guess. But so I've always found that very interesting, because people will act like, a lot of times I don't want to use the word psychic because it's a bad word. Now I know in certain states you actually cannot use the word fortune teller. It's actually against the law, is my understanding, in certain states.
Yeah, that's what we found. Yeah.
Yeah, but the word psychic is a word that I always had this really bad connotation of, to be honest, for a long time. And so I always call myself an intuitive, or another just more palatable word. And then I got to the point where, why don't we just reclaim the word psychic, because it's really doesn't have that bad of a connotation. When you really look it up, it's been given that connotation, but the basic first or second definition is not really a negative connotation.
And I've heard you tell people that exact same thing. Look up the definition of psychic, look up the definition of faith, and look and see how they actually correspond. Sound very similar, just like what you did there. And then, and a lot of times I tell people, as kids, a lot of us have imaginary friends. And as we get older, we're told, or we're told from older people, imaginary friends aren't real, which is what happened to me. But did you see the video on Facebook? I think it was yesterday or today, where the lady went to the cemetery to visit her mom's grave and took her daughter with her. The little girl's probably like, I don't know, 3 or 4. And she walks over, and she starts having a conversation with somebody, but then you see her reach over and kiss the person. And it's having just a full-blown conversation.
Oh, man.
So, and a lot of times what happens, though, is that, even as adults, if an adult did that today, people are like, ooh, they kind of start backing away from that type, because they don't realize that person hasn't been shut down, like the 3-year-old, the 4-year-old, the 5-year-old told, oh, there's no such thing as, invisible friends. Those aren't real, things like that.
Right. It's interesting because I don't know that I ever really had what you would call an invisible friend. I knew there were certain, like every night, a certain voice drifted down the hall saying my name, made me feel very comfortable. It was almost, I think, every single night. I've said that before. I knew that I could see certain things and kind of have clairvoyance, and I would have claircognizance, where you just kind of know things, but definitely clairaudience too, like the little girl was having. She was probably seeing too, where you do hear different things, and of course eventually it becomes hard to know, is that, are you psychic or are you crazy? And to be honest with you people who do have a lot of that coming through, and a lot of noises coming through, and a lot of information coming through, you might, if you were to listen to everyone else, kind of start thinking, I might be a little crazy.
Right.
So when we say I'm psychic, I'm not crazy, it's literally, sometimes you do have to keep your mouth shut unless you're around people that can understand what you're doing. It used to be that way. Because they would call it maybe the spirit of discernment, or I've got a message for you from God. And in a church atmosphere, that would be, at least in the church I grew up, that would be a perfectly fine thing to do. Now, in other churches, but I grew up in a church where things were done a little bit untraditional. It was more of a Assembly of God or non-denominational church, or I guess you could call it maybe sort of Pentecostal. People would, because I'm thinking about somebody who told us a story, and I don't know if I can say their name, but about, receiving something from someone, and it was like 3 pages of what God had told them to tell this person. Okay, so that could be looked at as a word from God that she was saying came directly to her.
Right.
And so there's a lot of people who will say that. So even those people will maybe get made fun of as being or evangelicals or someone like that will get made fun of as like, oh, that's crazy. There's no way that God would talk directly to you. I do believe that spirits and even God could talk directly to us personally. I do believe that.
I believe that. I mean, and my bigger challenge is the fact that people that say only God can speak through these people, not all of these people.
Right.
I have a bigger challenge on that side of it, that when people say that.
Right.
Because there's no reason that, he couldn't speak through anybody.
But I think it's probably for somebody, an oracle or a prophet, if something's just not typically accepted, it's going to be more difficult for someone to, no matter what you're coming from, so a religious background or from, and they may overlap, I don't necessarily like the word religious, but more spiritual background, and for faith and for some psychic information, you're going to get the word spiritual that comes up a lot. So, but when do you really know? I guess the reason we wanted to talk about it is because a lot of people ask us, well, how do we explain what we do to people and not sound completely crazy? So I know you probably don't worry about it, but for people who might, or who might want to talk to their family, I'm connecting with spirit, I'm connecting with my higher self, I'm connecting with guides. What does that mean, and why does that make the person? How can you relay that information to somebody so they can understand, and you can open that conversation without them thinking that you're completely crazy? Mm-hmm. Do you have any ideas?
No, because I just say it. Don't worry about it.
Right.
For me. But I guess you just kind of like, if you kind of relate yourself back a lot of times to spiritual leaders, not religious leaders, and I do talk about that with people a lot of times when we're talking about spiritual religion. Religion is a set of rules. Spiritual is what you feel. And you have spiritual leaders, and they do receive messages, and and it's not just always just the same message. That's where you really are. You're not that person where you're just a person getting one message from one person, and you're kind of in a box. You're actually opened up for messages throughout.
Right. I remember when back in the day, do y'all remember Oral Roberts?
Mm-hmm.
And there's an Oral Roberts University. I grew up knowing about him, listening to him. People in my family actually, I think, maybe my grandfather did some tent revivals with him. But when he came out, and I don't know what year it was, and he came out and he said, the world's going to end on this day. Well, first of all, he was kind of going against the Bible, because the Bible says nobody knows exactly when things will end. That I believe it even says that Christ himself doesn't know. I could have that last part wrong, but no one knows. So he was already kind of going against even people who were in his religion. Mm-hmm. But it's happened a lot where, like, I think people will make a prediction that this is when. And he was pretty specific. He said, and I think he went also, if I recall, and we might want to look this up, but if I believe where he kind of really messed up is he was like, gives this much money before this day. I think is where he went a little bit overboard. But, what...
Is that like the one that I need money for an airplane?
Yes. I remember that, kind of. What happened on that?
He needed money for an airplane because he needed a bigger airplane so he could fly privately to all those poor sinners on the other side of the world to actually bring the word of God to them.
But it had to be in an airplane. Well,
but it had to be like a certain jet. And I forget.
One.
You remember which model that was? It was like some like $6 billion jet or some crazy shit. Yeah.
I remember us talking about that. And that's sort of extortion. Is that the right word? A little bit too, because I think when it goes into that and you're trying to get somebody
buying their way into heaven.
Yeah. So it'd be like this. It'd be like, we don't believe in saying we're going to get a curse off someone and taking money, because that would cross an ethical line. So it'd be sort of the same thing.
Yeah.
Stop the end of the world, or, please, Christians are told to evangelize to the whole world. So that's probably what he was saying. I need this plane to go to the other parts of the world. But, now we have internet and all that. You don't have to do that.
Well,
But,
you can fly commercial.
or you have different ways to get, well, you do that, but you also have different ways to get messages to the whole world than
Sure.
we used to.
Sure.
But
For $6 billion,
Yeah.
you could drop everybody a free cell phone and tell them to watch me every Sunday.
yeah, you could. But so that, I remember when that happened with him, and it really basically, of course, the day came and went, and with Oral Roberts, and the world didn't end, and it really kind of ended his career, I think. And I remember being saddened by it because I thought, I think this was somebody who wasn't totally a shyster, scoundrel guy. I don't think he was totally a horrible person. I think he probably meant a lot of what he did, got caught up. That's my personal truth. I don't just believe every single man or woman of God that asks for money is a bad person, but it's interesting the parallels between it, because even in that, when you get into certain peripheral, like side, when somebody goes a step too far about what they've heard from God, you might believe it if he said, I heard from God that this, I don't know if he had some prophecy of something else that he heard, that might not go too far. But if it comes to asking for money in the end of the world, then people get a little different.
Yeah.
So I think that's all kind of on a scale. But when you say the word psychic, at least if I heard it back in high school or something, I would have just thought crazy person who talks. I would have. Because I really had just said, I started playing tennis like in 6th grade, and I played every single day from after school till like 8:30 at night. In fact, I'd have my last period of class be tennis. So that would be where I helped the other teams. Then I would go, in high school I did like the JV team, then I would be on the varsity team. So, and I'd stay till like 8:30 at night. I remember at least till the lights came on and we were still playing tennis. And so getting into that whole physical activity kind of got me out of anything where I was listening to the information that I get all the time.
It was a way for you to tune it out.
Right, totally. And to stay really, really physically active.
Yeah, well, it sucks when you see everything and
You still
everything's everywhere. Yeah.
But you can eventually turn it off. But I do understand how eventually somebody who, I remember being too at the DA's office when the people would come and it was really sad because they would have I said this on here before? They would have the little foil hats on, and they would come.
I remember us talking about it. I don't know if you said it
So
on
they
here.
would come and, they would have, usually their offense was, first of all, most of them I think were probably homeless. And their offense would be they would get a coat hanger and get it in the parking lot when you would pay at parking lots in downtown Dallas. And back then it would be a little slot. It wouldn't be like, and maybe they still have that, where you shove the money down in with this little pin thing. You shove your dollar bills down in there. Well, they would figure out how to get the dollar bills out. And so we would get those as cases we had to prosecute. And I remember feeling really bad for several because they would be up, you see them. I mean, when you see somebody with foil on their head, like a little foil, it almost looked like what do you
They
call
thought
it?
it blocked.
What do you call the Jewish, is it a yarmulke? What is
Yarmulke.
Yarmulke. It looked like a yarmulke, but made out of aluminum foil.
Right.
Seriously, they would have it, but then they'd have like stuff all over it, and then they might have some stuff like on their hands, or because they were afraid that stuff was getting into their head and voices, and they thought the government might be trying to do something to them, but some of them just heard voices.
Right.
So that could be schizophrenia, right?
Right.
And mental health issues. But since then I've wondered and looked back and thought to myself, because my heart always still did go out to them, and I thought, I wonder how many people, if you just say to people, I hear these voices, or I'm hearing this, or they're telling me, or spirit's telling me, why does that make that any different than somebody who's completely crazy, and how do you know?
What do you think, maybe possibly kind of going back to people that are around those people? in the beginning, instead of being supportive and saying, I understand, let's see what really is going on, they're like, no. Because it's like anything, if you hear it enough times, you start believing it.
Right.
You're crazy, people will start believing, you're a good
Oh, you're
person, you're a
hearing you're
good person, you're a
crazy.
good
Yeah.
person, you're a good person, you believe it.
Right. Well, yeah. So I don't know. I think it's a fine line, and I do. That's where doctors come in, because even here, if I get somebody in who's just really, but who it's hard. I can't judge because I'm not a doctor or psychologist. It's not for me to judge. But if I told everybody everything that I saw, heard, and and everything. I mean, it's interesting when we say, okay, I think I might have seen something over in the corner, and we all get like, ghost hunt and all that kind of stuff. But when does it become that person's crazy because they're seeing stuff?
Right.
And I will tell you, as a child, I did get to be I think if I hadn't been in that type of church where it was a little more acceptable, I would have felt a lot crazier a lot sooner. I do. I know I'm not. I kind of definitely have bits of crazy in me, but it's not. I know that the part that where I hear voices or I see things, I know I really see them.
Yeah.
So, we're in a field where it's interesting because I'm giving a speech in Portland this weekend, or two, actually. I'm leading an ethics panel and giving a speech on Professional Development Day. And on the ethics thing, that's where I started thinking about it some, because we do continuing reader education here at Soultopia, and we talk about ethics a lot. And, of course, we would never, ever want to, we're not playing, and we don't do the con thing.
Right.
And I even have readers who will be like, I'm not getting a message for you, so I need to give your money back. That doesn't happen very often to me, but it does happen. But think about it, that there is a fine line of knowing, and I guess probably the biggest one ethically, to know where if you're going to somebody and they're trying to tell you a message, or they're a psychic or anything like that, is just always, do we charge for our time? Yes, because we have a building and it's actually, I think, a service, just like being a lawyer. But when you're charged exorbitant amounts of money and like, oh, something's going to happen to you if you don't do this, then that's when it's fraudulent and it's wrong.
You mean,
I believe,
if you give me $3,000, I'll take this curse off of you?
exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it went that far with, I don't know, with the guy with the jet, but think about people who really followed him, really would give that money, would really think they needed that money. And I think that's where it gets really unethical. But as far as feeling crazy, I think you can feel crazy a lot sooner if you're not having, like, the kids that are coming in with so much information, and they're so much brighter. And if you'll listen to them, they will say things that are highly predictive. And it's not just because they're honest, like, oh, what's that on your face? They'll do that too. And it's kind of embarrassing when they're your kids. You're like, please don't say that. Don't insult the waitress that way. Ooh, what's on your face? But they'll also come out with some, like that child at the cemetery, they'll come out with some things that are very, very otherworldly, and we just discount them and dismiss them. But I think more and more parents are not doing that. They'll put it this way: more and more parents are being okay with their kid being empaths, and an empath is where you take on other people's feelings. So because psychology and pop psychology has embraced that, I think that's more accepted now. So it's, to me, there's really no difference in it. When you're taking that on, you can feel and you can say, this is what they're thinking. Well, that's telepathy, okay? Or this is what they're feeling. So they're accepting a lot of those. That is true. It's just how we define it, what we call it. I think that freaks people out. So that's why we've decided to, I use the word psychic a lot, and I made myself use it because I didn't want to. I didn't want to use the word because I knew it sounded like, oh, this is supposed to be somebody who went to law school, who's smart, who's professional, who's now using the word psychic. That's crazy.
Yeah. And if you think about it, I mean, your class, and I'm not trying to plug your class, but I tell people too, on Thursday night, your Intuitive Insights class, it helps people to understand what's going on with them. Because you were asking a few minutes ago, what do you do? How do you come out to your family, things like that, right? But if another part of it is the feeling in yourself. A lot of times people just come in. Every day we have lots of new people coming in every day that come in the door, never been in a shop, and they're like, I just know something's happening. But those people need to be coming back to class on Thursday so they can actually understand it better. And if you think about it, if they have a good outlet, whether it's at class or just somebody to talk to that's understanding versus that, person that's, the naysayer and doesn't want to help, it would help a lot of these people out before they get, too far down the road with it.
And I think kids too. I think that's this summer we're planning on having things for kids and teenagers at the store. I think, and we've done that before. We've had things with Angie Williams, a Southern psychic. She lives right outside of Kansas now.
Yeah.
Love her. And she came in and did an empathy class with teenagers. So hopefully we can have something like that. But I think, or classes for parents on how to help with kids who, instead of trying to shame it out of them. But I don't know the line of when. I just ask for higher guidance to know that line for when I might say somebody they might be a little unstable, might need to get, go to their doctor or see somebody, because you want to make sure, because there could be that situation too. And I'm not sure what that means. I mean, could it mean that they understand even a whole lot more than we understand? It could. I don't know that for sure. It's just I'm not going to be the one to take that risk and not be safe with someone's health.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, I've actually heard people in this business say, well, they're not any of those things. They're really probably hearing messages and people's just ignoring them. I don't know. I'm not there yet. I think there's probably sometimes when we can get way out of balance. Because I do think it's like, what's the difference? Because if you're connecting with, people will call it spirit. And what would that's it's like the higher source, right?
Spirit, source.
Spirit or source or God or whatever you want to call it. And so I think that if somebody wants to understand, how do I connect to something higher than myself? Even in like AA and all of the 12-step programs, they'll say find something outside of yourself to connect to, something higher than yourself. And I remember used to thinking that would be so empty if the thing I thought of that was higher than myself was like that microphone or that camera, but or that chip. That would be really hard for me to. But then now I see everything as one. So I'm like, okay, you find that there is something you're connected to source, you're connected to everybody else, at least even everybody else, and your higher self are something greater than yourself. It's hard to explain, but I do think that when people start feeling it, there are some people who, like, they really, really, really want to know about how to connect to something besides themselves, but they really are disenchanted maybe with a church experience. It was interesting. I saw on that horrible thing, social media, Facebook. Y'all are listening to it. But I also read an article on that today. It was interesting about that it's got a lot more cons, Facebook and social media, than pros now.
It's Facebook, y'all.
Yeah, but
laugh. It's funny. Don't get so serious about it.
Yeah, don't get so serious, y'all. So, but it was about this lady who, now I've lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. She was connecting. I can't remember. Oh, it was the fact that she will go and connect with nature, and she will have her one-on-one time with nature and her meditation. And she has relatives who get really mad that she's not going to church. And she's like, I do believe in God. I do believe, and she identifies as a Christian. But she just says, I don't have to go there. I'm communing because, you're supposed to gather. In the Bible, it says to gather with other people. And I'm talking about the Christian Bible. And it's interesting because a lot of the Bibles or the manuals of religions are at their core very similar. And so most of them would say kind of to gather together and come together. And she's like, I do. I'm just coming together with nature, with trees, beings that I connect with more than I do. Yeah. I thought that was interesting.
As you think about it, you feel better sitting in a pew dressed up Nice and
Well, I don't think
straight.
you always have to dress up. I think
Oh,
that,
I was told I had to dress up
and that's why
by
you
the
stopped going,
preacher.
right?
By
Yeah,
the
because you
preacher.
wore jeans. That's unfortunate. Because now you
Got to set
can't.
straight. Straight.
My guess is you were doing more than just not.
Actually,
dressing up.
I was a great kid, but
You weren't doing more to
do
get him
you
to
feel
sit up
better there or when we go to the lake and
to the lake.
Okay.
But I do love church and like songs and all that, and I do feel spirit there and God there.
I'll take you
very,
to the
very
lake and
much.
you can sing out loud.
Well, then it might not be so relaxing. We'll take Tracy to sing or
We'll
somebody.
go.
No, turn on the radio. Yeah, I love communing with nature. I liked how
What's
she
that?
said
Oh,
that.
Amazing Grace. You can go out there, sing Amazing Grace.
I love that song.
That's what I mean.
I love that song. But so the answer to, I guess, the question is no, I don't think I'm crazy, but I definitely think there was a time, for those of you who wonder, it's becoming more and more accepted. There was a time when I was definitely taken to doctors and things because I also had a lot of headaches that went along with a lot of the stuff the visions and the dreams and the things that happened with me.
They prescribed a lot of good medicines,
I would
right?
get a lot of no orange juice. I would get a lot of good messages and through dreams and through seeing things, and then you learn to kind of be quiet about it so you don't get stuck in a mental hospital.
I
Because they
remember
will
you
say you're
telling
crazy.
me about seeing the angels with your great grandmother, right?
So it was actually my grandmother. I called her great mama because that's what my kids called her. So it was their great grandmother. And she lived to be 106. And she was totally a woman of faith. And faith is what she was. She was a woman of faith. And I guess probably hadn't been churched in years. But when there was a little girl, I think the little girl that came over to see her, and the little girl played the violin, and then my grandmother pointed and said, "Do you see them? Do you see them?" And she was pointing up to angels in the room. And I think the little girl, I think the story is that the little girl did, but other people didn't. But I'm not sure if I'm embellishing that story, but I know my grandmother did. And then I think it was just a couple of days later that she passed away at 106 years old, which is pretty amazing. Yeah. And by the way, she ate fried foods all the time. I just want y'all to know, fried in deep Crisco.
There you go, all natural.
But it was from their garden. But she did. I loved eating over there because it'd be like that Crisco in the pan, and like fried chicken.
It was like homemade lubies.
It was homemade lubies. Yeah, good lubies. And well, lubies is good. But yeah, homemade. That's good. Yeah, it was.
Lubies. That's why you like lubies so much.
It is. It is. Because it's like home cooking and vegetables and stuff like that, even though, yeah. But she also, though, probably why she lived so long was because she's also a woman, I don't think, everybody now thinks, well, everybody lies and everybody's dishonest. That's not true. I mean, there were people who you just didn't lie. You were very honest. You lived with the utmost integrity, and she did. And she worked out in the garden till she we had to stop her, and she would rake our leaves till she was like 99, I think. And we were afraid she would fall, but they were farmers, so she would work manual labor. So I'm sure that's part of why she lived so long and had sound mind the whole time. She was of sound mind the whole time until a few days before she passed.
Eating all those vegetables from the garden.
Yeah, well, and all that hard work too.
Yeah.
That she had a hard life, to be honest. Not our cushy lives that we have now that we think are so hard. Yeah, they're not that hard, really. They're not.
No.
But anyway, so where are we on time?
We are at 34 minutes.
Okay.
So we got another 10 minutes.
Do you want to do some readings?
We could. Let me ask if anybody wants a reading.
And
You think anybody wants one?
Well, I didn't check yet because if I get on the phone again, I'll get too distracted. But while he's looking, I'd say this. One of the things I'm saying in Portland is to talk about like your elevator pitch. Like if you do want to tell somebody something, whatever it is in your life that's like different than if you think you're going to be met with resistance or it's going to be hard for you to really embrace who you are or what you believe, you may want to get that down to a few sentences, like a little elevator pitch that you can give in 2 or 3 minutes or even a minute to tell people. So you're not pitching to sell them anything. You're just pitching, this is what I think, this is what I believe, and that you don't have to hem-haw around about it and make excuses, because I do find myself, I was telling Erica the other day, I do find myself with certain people just fine telling them what I do, and then with other people I find myself being like really almost embarrassed, because I'm still stuck back in that I want to be deemed more intellectual and not somebody who would just believe crazy stuff. So I think if you're one of those people who needs something, a way to say it, get an elevator pitch. Do we have people who want readings?
Yep.
Okay.
Got 3.
All right. We haven't changed the decks out here since last time. You like this Hush to Row by Jeremy Hush, right? You do that one. And I meant to bring some cards in here that I'm really liking, but I'll just read from... These look good. I think this is what I read with last time. We have these in the store. It's Edmund Dulac, Dulac, Tarot, and that's what I'm reading with.
Okay.
Okay. And I don't know who this was. Yeah. Italy. That's probably why I can't say the name.
Well, they're Italian.
It's not East Texan at all. But these are pretty cards. All right, so who's first?
Robin.
Robin?
Yep.
Okay.
Robin.
All right. You ready?
And I know we get a lot of people saying they want readings, so we kind of do the readings until we have time, guys. So just kind of bear with us.
Maybe mix them around from if people have had them before.
Okay.
Maybe have somebody else have a turn or something, but
I like them because they spread easily.
oh, this one too. It's good on this this velvet
holds
or
up
whatever.
because it has a little bit of grip to this tablecloth, so they do move
They
really
don't
easy
go all
on
over the
it.
place. I'll start. It's general, right?
Yes, yes.
Well, it's interesting. We were just talking about church and stuff because I actually got the Tower card, but this picture doesn't look anything like the typical Tower card, and it's actually having me question myself whether this card is actually the Tower card. It's 16 is Tower, right? And so and I know my cards, but I'm just sitting here going, because it's so pretty. It almost looks like a picture, and I'll show it, from like that Vincent Van Gogh kind of Starry Night, but with a really pretty church stuck in it. And then there's a guy, and then there's a smaller one in the distance, and the guy's standing, or a person is standing under that, and they're all in dark. So it's interesting to me because the minute I pulled the card, I thought, this is interesting what we're talking about. The Tower sometimes will be a card of things unexpectedly changing in your life. And so I feel like, who are we reading for again? It's
Robin.
Robin. I believe, Robin, that what I'm getting for you is that sometimes you do stand alone in your beliefs, and sometimes it does cause some turmoil. Just keep going to what you think the truth is. It really ties into what we're talking about. I don't feel like it's like the Tower card in any kind of negative sense. I think it's the Tower card in that we have to get rid of some of the things in our life that don't serve us to get to better things in our life. And that's true and I'll just say for anybody going through stuff right now, we have to get through, like if it's a hardship with job or hardship with relationships, it feels really bad when it's happening, but sometimes we have to get through it to get to something better. That's why I feel like something is coming in better for you. Just stick to what you believe. You can start, Roger. Here's the card.
Okay. So the card I drew was actually the Sun card, and we always talk about Sun card being one of the best cards in the deck. But what's cool about this card is it's setting the sun, and I'm going to show it here. The sun is actually on top of a raven. Looks like a raven, blackbird. And a lot of times, blackbirds, people represent, with messages coming across, things like that, or negativity. But we were talking about it. It's not always about negativity coming across, with blackbirds. It doesn't always, they are messengers cards. But the sun is setting on it, and there's an eye in the sun. So what I actually kind of see is actually you need to start paying attention to the signs around you, the things that are around you. You're going to have some information coming to you, some actual positive information. The sun is actually, because the bird's kind of bent back like the sun's coming down on top of it. So he's kind of just got his art, kind of bent back, looking back. So I think you'll see that as being a very good messages coming, signs around you, Robin. So be paying attention. Don't be running through the street or, driving down the road and not paying attention what your surroundings, signs coming up.
I think that's really interesting because for a couple reasons, we were going to do a whole show on signs. Maybe we'll do it next time and go through some ways y'all can do that, some action items for you guys. But I was walking Loki the other day, and there's 4 of these. Matt, can we see that? Okay, so I'll zoom in. So there were 4 of those big, I don't know if they're crows.
They were crows.
They were crows, and they were huge. This does no justice to how big these things were. I mean, so big. Can y'all see that? And so I noticed them. There were 4 of them. At first I thought there's just 3s, and a lot of things come in 3s, but on another part of that branch there was another one. There were 4, and they kept sticking together. And then up higher in the branch, or in the tree, there was a tanner. My daughter was in town, and she said there's a blue jay nest around here because I see that blue jay every time I come in town. And I said, well, that's also a message for you. And what you can do is, if you get those messages from animals or something, you can look at spirit-animals.com, and you can look at what that, and be specific. It'll be specific about the kind of dog you have. Like if you have a French, what do we have?
French
a Frenchie.
bulldog.
I was going to say French poodle. A French bulldog, or you have a beagle. It's going to tell you exactly, or if that's your totem, or if you see them a lot for some reason randomly, or they're in your life, they'll tell you why. So that's spirit-animals.com. I love that website. But those crows, and I thought that was to really watch for the magic for me. Then I saw that blue jay, and then I saw squirrel, which is pretty common. But so interesting, so I agree with you, watching for those signs. Yeah. I wanted to tell you about those big old, man, they were huge. Did you see them?
I saw them when I saw them, because I had just went out earlier that day, and they were on the ground.
Like alive.
Like, oh, yeah.
I was sitting on the ground
they were like hopping around on the ground and stuff like that.
But those are sometimes those like krakens or whatever, aren't they? Those black
no,
ones.
this one wasn't.
These were crows.
These are crows.
That's what
yeah,
I
these are
thought I
crows.
was seeing.
Crows have they're black with a kind of yellow beak.
And it almost looks like Labradorite,
like
the crystal.
Heckle and
feathers.
Jekyll.
Oh, what do you mean?
Okay.
I didn't get it.
I'm too old for that, I guess.
I didn't get it. Okay, so who are we reading for next?
Next is Ashley.
Okay. Oh, this is an interesting depiction. These cards are really, really interesting. All right, give me just a second. All right, so it's weird because all the messages I'm getting kind of go back to what we were talking about. It feels to me like you are sort of having to tiptoe through and navigate your way through what you believe. And you don't have entire support for what you believe. And you have a lot of, I'm going to call them thought forms that are coming at you. Thought forms can be where we have a collective mindset of something that other people might call them like demons, okay? So thought forms can be positive too, but it feels like you have something you feel really is, I'm not saying you have a demon, I'm just saying a thought form of some negative around you right now, and it feels like you're trying to tiptoe through that and not step on people's toes and trying to navigate what you believe, because it almost feels like you feel like the boogeyman's going to get you or something, like something's scaring you about what you believe. I would tell you, no matter how strong you are in what you believe, I would maybe talk to somebody, get a reading, or talk to somebody of faith or psychic, whichever one, whoever you feel you could talk to about this thing that is around you. I want to be very careful how I say that, because I don't mean, oh, you need to have it removed or anything. I think you're probably aware. Something's scaring you a little bit. Okay. But what I'm getting is you'll be fine. You actually know how to handle it. Okay, your turn.
My turn. Okay, Ashley. This card is actually the Six of Wands. What's cool about this card is it's a bird with a fairy-ish looking creature on the back. I'm trying to tell if it actually is a fairy or not, but it's actually a female creature on the back of the bird flying. She has a wand staff, and the bird is actually carrying one of those long axes. But what else is cool is all the way around while they're flying are little bumblebees with the same little, sphere axis and all. So, the thing about it is that Ashley, with this card, if you think about it, I know things come in challenges and things like that, but look around you, the people that you have that are supporting you, people, friends, family, anybody around you. When things are kind of start getting a little rough, always remember you have those people around you that are very, your support team, people that are there to help and to look out for you. And don't be shy. Don't like turn away from them or think, oh, I've got this. I can handle this on my own. Depend on those people around you or the things that are coming up. Use those people as just kind of a sounding board or whatever you need, and reach out to them.
God, these are amazing cards. The ones that Roger, both of them are, but the ones that Roger's reading from, the Hush Tarot, they're really, really good. All right, so the next one, do we have time?
Then we have time for one more, right?
Okay. All right, so
Lachelle, Lichele.
I like that name.
Lachelle.
Okay.
I hope I said it right. I was kind of hoping I was correct about that.
All right, so for Lachelle, the highest and best good. I tried to do fancy swirl and I didn't get it. The hair at the end is just a little little fan. All right. I wonder if these cards are all about our sort of shadow things, because that's what I keep getting. Okay, so Lachelle, I feel a couple things. I feel that you are having, it almost feels like something's pressing down on you, like on your chest. It's like anxiety. It's overwhelming. It's pressing. There's something really heavy, heavy, heavy that keeps pushing on you and pressing on you. And then it makes you kind of get in a cycle of anxiety and worrying about things. I do, again, feel like there's some maybe, honestly, like a clearing or talking to someone would help, because I feel like there's a lot of fears and anxieties in your mind right now. And it's manifesting in like some pressure and pushing on your chest. It feels like anxiety totally to me. So maybe, Roger, do you have anything to add on to that? Because I'm getting so much from this card, I don't even know. It's almost like, it's kind of the same as Ashley. It's kind of like there's some things that you are dealing with that other people might say that's just in your head, that's just in your mind, like we were talking about. Mm-hmm. But it's not. It doesn't mean it's like, oh, like I'm being doom and gloom. I'm just saying I believe you. Whatever, if you were sitting in front of me, I believe you that there are some things that are really concerning you. And some people might just say, well, it's just in your head. Don't worry about it. That's just you manifesting bad things. It's not, but yet I do also think you have the power to rewrite that story. Here's the picture. Okay. Is the Nine of Swords. Okay. We get it?
Okay, so I got here is actually the Two of Cups. It's two females drawn together. What's cool about this card, the energy, traditional card is like where they're toasting the cups together, right? This card, though, is they're actually kind of setting, kind of one over the other almost, and brought together. And it's like almost almost like a mother-daughter energy. They might not actually be mother-daughter, but it's that energy feel, that real close feel together because of how they're setting. And it's almost like it's them against the world. It's them against all this all the BS, all the bullshit, all the stuff that's out there, all the things. It's you depending on, not depending, but you going through and you got that person to work with and to, attack the world together. Don't shorthand that relationship. Keep that relationship strong. Keep it. It's very, very strong energy with that person.
Do you feel like, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but do you feel like she's the one needing to lean on the other one, or the other one on her, or both ways?
I think it's both ways a little bit, but I think it's the other person that needs a little bit more help.
I do too. That's how I feel that. That's exactly what I thought. And remind that other person of their ability to know when because the other one has an owl totem with them. So the other one can call on owl energy to help with discernment and to know and wisdom, and to know. I keep getting Athena for both of you and whoever maybe you're helping.
Their energy's like really good and close together.
And but you're teaching them about that Athena energy to know when to go to battle and know when to pull back and really just use talking and diplomacy, and then go to battle when you need to. And you're helping this person learn that with owl energy and energy of Athena. These are beautiful cards.
Yeah,
they really
I like
are.
These.
Every time we do these, we had animal totems in class. We had last week, Thursday and Friday, right, of last week.
Thursday and Friday.
At Carrollton, we did animal totems, and Friday at Bishop Arts, and we had a really good turnout for both. And it was really, really interesting. So we will try to do that one time. But I always think, I don't know all the animal totems. How can I possibly do it? But you don't need to know them. You can always look them up again, like I said. And if I were you, one of the things I would just invite, like an action item for y'all to do before we close, is do your own study on, you'll kind of get lost in it if you're interested in it. Doing a study on psychic, faith, spirituality, intuition, and see where that all ties together for you. For many of us, it all leads back to source and all being one and a connection with all that is. It's not trying to cut that out of the picture. Now, I'm not saying everyone believes like me, but for most of us, that is. Most of the people, when they're wanting to connect with their spirit guides, they're wanting to know if they have angels around them, whatever that looks like to them, it's usually because they're wanting to be pointed to something higher than ourselves, because we want that. We want to know that that's there for us. And I can just tell you from seeing that I do know spirits, and whatever form you need to see them in, they will come to you. For Roger, they come to him like ETs. To me, they'll come more like angels/fairies usually, and they'll just come in whatever form, those guides to help you. But I think it's interesting, if for those of you who think you're crazy because you do see things or hear things, you're not. So that's why we
embrace it.
Embrace it, and but I would highly recommend you get your little elevator pitch down for the people who, if you have different worlds that you're in, because I do.
Maybe we should have a class on that.
Maybe we should. And we'd like to hear from you guys what your experience has been and how you explain that. If you want to go on to SoulWhat on Facebook, and also just put all your interests there. If you'll join us on Facebook on SoulWhat, and follow me on YouTube at Michelle Soultopia. I have all kinds of videos there too. And really, I'm reading at the end of the show. You can follow us and listen on iHeart Radio app, on Google Podcasts, iTunes, and of course by watching us live. And like I said, YouTube at Michelle Soultopia, and both of our Facebook pages at SoulWhat and at Soultopia Holistic Boutique. You can also check us out on Instagram too if you want. But thanks a lot for listening tonight, where we try and discuss topics that are important to our soul, and you get to decide what matters and is important to your soul. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.